Hello guys, it's Chamaster here doing a very important Bottleman discussion. This is a big issue with the newest Bottleman release, Kokuryuoh G. I made an unboxing on this recently and I was not aware of this issue at the time, and didn't happen to me yet, nothing happened with it, and I didn't hear anything about it, but after the video I actually did have an issue with it, and I have seen other people with this issue. So let's get into what is wrong with this. So Kokuryuoh G, luckily mine here is still intact. So yeah, it's still intact, the arms are still fine. While I would like to show the issues with the core, I can't because I'm not taking these arms off again, and I'll explain why. So basically, the arm parts, not the arm parts, but like the core itself, the parts that attach the arm, those parts on the core are very problematic for this release, for two different reasons that I want to get into. The first reason is that they are very prone to breakage. There have been many problems with people having breakage issues with these. I've heard, there's actually on Amazon Japan, I translated some of the reviews, so it might not be 100% perfect English, but multiple of them mentioned that part that connects the arms breaking, so it's definitely not a one-off issue, it's a repeating issue. I also have seen someone have their arm break off with the part of the core attached to it. I've seen that happen. And my own, again, I would show you if it wasn't a risk to take it apart, but mine also has stress marks on it. This arm here has one decent sized stress mark on it, and then this one has actually a couple pretty giant ones. I'm for sure never taking this arm off again. It will more than likely break if I do. This arm, I don't know, it'll probably just make it worse, but you never know, it could also break off. So, yeah, that's kind of the problem that I wanted to bring up. That said, do I still think this was overall like a good Bottleman? Outside of the issue, just conceptually, yes, and I still stand by recommending it overall, but I need to make this everyone aware of kind of the risks involved with using this thing. Because if you're just going to display this or use it in a stock form, you don't have any problems. But the problem is that this is like the one release that actually has two sets of arms, with the cannon arms, and then it's, normal arms here. And this kind of brings us into the other issue, which I think is playing a big part in the problem, and that is the core design. So I have two other examples here to kind of show what I mean by this. So if we zoom in on Arrowsighter, you can kind of see, a little bit anyway, this tab here. It's very, very hard to see, but there's like a small little tab that sticks out of the arm part connector on the core. Might just barely even be able to see that in there, but it's there. Now let's look at Dragger G. You can see it there as well, and if you look at the side, you might be able to tell just a little bit that it's a bit more prominent. So the God Cap cores actually have arm parts that stick out, or like the core part that kind of snaps the arm in place. They actually stick out a little bit more on the God Cap core as opposed to DX cores. It was harder to notice this initially. I didn't really think too much of this. I didn't even notice a problem. However, God Cap arms worked fine on DX cores, and even DX arms, I still never heard any issues of them with God Cap cores. However, the Kokuryuoh G core, the tabs, those little bumps on the arm part tabs there, on the core, they are actually larger than the normal God Cap ones, so they're even bigger on the DX ones. So even if there was any mold differences between DX and God Cap arm parts to kind of make up for the size difference there, this is a massive difference with this core in particular. And this means that arm parts get stuck on this thing. Its own arms have caused problems and breakage issues. Again, looking at those Amazon reviews and the person that, showed their broken Kokuryuoh, both of them were just with the normal arm parts that it comes with. That is really bad. And I mentioned this arm being more messed up, and that's because I actually did a test where I put 10 Satan DX's arm on there, and it took so much force to get that off. So I was only pushing upwards. I didn't want to push any, like, sideways directions. I wasn't trying to pull it out or anything, or like away, in, whatever. I was only pulling up, which meant I had to put my hands on those, like, spike things on there to try and avoid breaking it. And while I did avoid breaking it, there were definitely stress marks. But the amount of force that was required to get that arm off was ridiculous. I don't know if you can actually, like, see on my hand visibly or not, but if you notice, like, on my hand, it's a little bit hard to see. I don't know if I could do this, like, maybe this finger looks a bit different than this one in terms of color and size. Yes. 4 of my fingers are actually bruised and swollen from trying to take an arm part off of this guy. It took that much force to do it. To where my fingers are bruised and swollen just from that, which is, like, it was ridiculous how stuck this thing was on there. Like, it was insane. So first up, never use any other arm parts on this thing. Like, just saying right now, I don't know if the God Cap ones work. I don't know if any other arm parts work. I'm not even going to try to test it. Just avoid it. It's not worth the risk because, again, its own arm parts are causing problems with this thing. And considering these have the biggest tabs, you know, the core, where the arm parts go, they have the biggest tabs of any core. So, if these arms are different than other ones, they would likely be able to support these better. So I'd assume any other arm part is going to be more problematic than these, or just the same, but still, it's clearly problematic regardless. So this was likely done to accommodate the cannon arm, the other set of arms that it comes with, which actually are pretty loosely fit. They just kind of slide on really easily. And you can kind of put them on other God Cap cores okay enough, but they fall off of DX cores. So I'm assuming that they made the bigger tabs on this to make sure the cannon arms fit properly. But that just doesn't make sense. Why would they do that? Like just why not reprint the cannon arms or remake them, remodel them in testing to make sure they fit properly on other cores? Why make this core hell to deal with? Again, the cannon arms fit perfectly on this thing. If you're going to use the cannon arms on this thing, it won't cause any problems, more than likely. The problem is, again, you have 2 sets of arms. You can't take these arms off. You can't swap them around. So again, what I'd recommend is just put these arms on here, and I guess if you want to use the other arms, wait till August to buy Bottleman G to keep it in that mode, and then keep this one in, like, this mode right here. So, yeah. Or buy 2 of them to have them displayed separately, because again, these arms are just not something you want to take off. The only arms that seem to be acceptable to take off of this core without damage are the cannon arms. Anything else just seems to damage this core. I honestly don't necessarily think that the core is made out of weaker plastic. I just genuinely think that those tabs are so big that it's ridiculous with how much force you need to take off any other arm part, and the amount of force required just puts too much stress on this plastic. It wasn't meant to withstand that much. I've never been a fan of the God Cap or even the DX cores with how the arm parts attach. That's something I mentioned all the way back in my Kokuryuoh DX unboxing well over a year ago, that I thought the prototype arms were better in terms of connection point. I thought they just worked better. I never liked these. And I mentioned I thought maybe there could be some breakage issues, and I always thought they were a bit more difficult to take off, but it wasn't as big of a deal back then. But we're now seeing the worst case of it, where taking off any other arm parts except one type seems to be causing damage and a ton of difficulty to get them off. So that's the problem with this release, and something I was not able to cover initially because, again, I was just not aware of this problem until after, experiencing more with it. So with that said, I do apologize for not mentioning that initially. I just didn't know at the time. My unboxings are meant to just be kind of my first thoughts in initial testings. I sometimes do follow-up discussions on stuff, or, do a whole ranking video on an entire line where I talk more about stuff. But this is something I really needed to talk about as soon as possible, because I do think it's a pretty huge issue with the line. Not the line, but with this Bottleman release, and it needed to be mentioned. So, for anyone who likes Bottleman, knows other people like Bottleman, share this video with them. Or if you don't want to share the video because it's like 10 minutes long, just at least tell them about this. Just send that, kind of keep the message alive. So so other people kind of know about this. Again, I still think that this release overall, you are getting a lot, so I wouldn't like say to avoid it. It's just to kind of be mindful of what you're doing with this core in particular, because it could, break very easily. Be very careful with these connection points on the arm, because there's a very high chance that they will break if you just try and take off an arm normally. Like this one. Again, I only ever had the normal arm on here. This one I had the DX arm on. This one was always normal. I took it off a total of 2 times. Once for the cannon arm to be put on, another time to disassemble the whole thing to try and get the other arm off. 2 times, and it already has a decent sized stress mark. Be very careful. You still get some cool stuff in this set, so again, it's cool overall. But yeah, this was horrible, and it just shows the biggest kind of problem with God Cap has just been the atrocious quality control, and that they've had no regard for making sure these things are good to use, They also just never mentioned this problem in any videos, God Cap and DX stuff. They always talk about, the customizability, but with this thing, just don't try. It's just not going to end well. So there you go. That's everything I want to say for this video. I know it's really long, but I just really wanted to get the message across here. So be very careful with this release, is what I'm trying to say. So anyway, that's all for this video. So thanks for watching, and bye-bye.